Before this class, I didn't realize how many cities were working together through their different organizations, or that all these organizations existed, and the amount of data that they've put together for us to be able to do a semester's worth of research and know a fair amount about a city.
I think one of the main objectives of the class was really the idea between what is mitigation versus adaptation. And as someone who has always just been an environmentalist in and of myself, doing the things that I can do, it is a lot of mitigation. It is, I'm going to recycle and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, but really understanding and learning what it means to adapt. And I'm still wrapping my brain around that, and unfortunately it's something that we all have to do. And so even if we don't want that to be the case, that is the case, and it's important to consider. So I think that main theme for me is very important.
Throughout the class, I sort of gained a greater appreciation for the way poverty affects climate risk, and the need to sort of address these on parallel tracks, because you can't solve climate risk without solving poverty. The sort of informal settlements, the way that they increase the vulnerability of a city and create a class of people who, I guess, they contribute the least to climate change and will bear the brunt.
What I learned in the class was the way policy works in a developing country, because we studied Dakar, which was very interesting to me, and just how unique and different all the cities are, and how difficult it is to be forming policy because of all the teeny little ins and outs you've got to know about the city.
And I gained an appreciation and understanding of number one, how much cities contribute to climate change, but also how much they can do to address it, and a greater understanding of how little the international community sort of addresses this dynamic. And I mean, they're changing, but I think that's a really interesting dynamic, and it's one that I really didn't know that much about.
The day that you drew the optimal gloom picture, that was something that really stuck with me. And but I think it was a theme that went through the whole class, of just thinking about how to communicate in such a way that incites action.
For me, the most important things that I learned are thinking about different ways to conceptualize issues and different ways to talk to different people about them. So when going through the book, you have different frameworks to analyze different things and different frameworks to look at different issues, and you see the different perspective based on where these people are from, that they're putting together these like case studies. And so it was kind of interesting to see, who was stressing what issues in each of the case studies, and to see kind of a more international perspective on these issues that I've only ever known my perspective. To see that I also was completely unaware of how to deal with climate change issues. I come from like a science background, so I just look at it and I see issues. Like, I see numbers and I see trends, but I've never been taught how to convey those to somebody else in a way that can make sense and to make them listen and to create change. And so this class kind of taught me the history, and also like different ways to talk to different people. I had no idea that that's what economists did and stuff like that. I mean, I'm learning so much kind of every day in all of my classes.
I'd also like to say one thing. I'm an urban policy student, and my focus really is, pardon me, is on economic development and community development. And it's nice to have this knowledge and this background kind of to broaden my thinking about development from my perspective, pardon me. So I think that's one of the major things that I've gotten out of the class as well.
The thing that I took away from this class the most is the interconnectedness of climate issues with other issues, social issues like poverty, but also in the case of Melbourne, very first world issues like business closure and like how much, I guess, climate impacts firms, and the kinds of things that you don't necessarily think of as the most vulnerable right away can also be affected, and that's compelling, not because you should feel worse for firms than for poor people, but because firms worry about their ability to stay in business and have the money and the resources to maybe act where poor people do not.
I am interested in working on food issues and food systems, and I see a lot of similarities between the way you approach thinking about cities and the way you approach thinking about food, because there are these common themes across the planet of how regional food systems work, but there's also these differences. So kind of getting a sense, the problem always seems so big, like how do you create a way to think about things that are so different but have these really same similarities? It seems like there should be some kind of structure. So I think just the overall assessment framework and kind of learning how to look at a really big problem and then kind of break it down into smaller sections and create essentially a tool where you have like a language and a process that codifies things in a way that you can have conversations across really different geographies or countries, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot, and I think that's definitely, like, for me, has been the biggest takeaway. It's just kind of getting a sense of how to think about really big issues in a structured and kind of focused analytical way.
I think just the discourse about adaptation, I think that it really is relatively new, even though we're in New York and Mayor Bloomberg has been a leader. I think I'm amazed that it hasn't really been a topic of conversation as much as I think it should be.
I think for me, I mean, it's up there, but that cities may be the best resource for adapting and mitigating climate change, whereas before, I don't know, I maybe thought that we need more national action, and maybe like that makes it easier for cities to act if they have that support, but that cities can adapt in the way that's most needed for their specific area, their specific population. That was definitely something that I picked up.
Well, it was actually kind of an optimistic class for me because I realized how much autonomy that cities have around the world. And while national and state governments may not be able to get it together to actually effectively do anything about climate change, at least cities can. And to me, that's a really good place to start.